it's Jennifer here from Belladonna's Botanicals. And this is another installment. I haven't done one in a little bit of Jennifer's insights on things. And I wanted to talk a little bit about dogmatic absolutism in the occult and left-hand path. I'm going to put this with the caveat that things are open to interpretation. I am willing to accept things. I could be wrong. My interpretations could be a little weird or left of center. So could yours. You know, that there's different ways to look at things. And if you're the type of person who's insisting your way is the only way and, you know, the whatever, that's kind of, usually it's coming to place from ego. You're looking down at someone in a, well, I'm a chosen one, or I'm, you know, my way is the correct interpretation and all y'all are you know, suffering from spiritual psychosis, or all of you are fakes and phonies and frauds. Well, you have no physical proof and blah, 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 blah. So anyways, if that's the kind of mentality you have approaching the occult and left-hand path, I would suggest that maybe atheism or agnosticism or something non-theistic might be more your speed. Because spiritual experiences are open to interpretation, and there is a variety of ways, and I recently made a video on this, on the different types of spiritual experiences. I will try to remember to put the link below. So, and some of us are old. I'm sorry, you know, there was no way for me to take a selfie with some ghosts when I was a kid, because rotary phones were kind of lame. Or I didn't have an audio recording device or something like that, that there was no way to prove these things that I've experienced throughout the course of my life, both physical, and dream work and whatnot. I think most people probably would, you know, if we had a contest to prove your legitimacy of spirituality, I think everyone would probably fail. I mean, unless you got a handwritten note from Satan or something. Pony it up. and let me make sure it's not a forgery or fake. So anyways, snarkiness aside, I particularly find dogmatic approaches to things rather, and maybe it's just because of having gone to Catholic school, I find the no, because I said so, and I'm right and you're wrong to be a big, that's my response to that usually. If it helps you sleep at night to think we're all fake and crazy and you're the one true whatever, and you've got the proof in the pudding and whatnot, if that helps you sleep at night, I don't give a, you know. But that doesn't mean that the spiritual experiences that people have are invalid. Now, there are phonies and frauds and charlatans out there. I will be the first to say that anyone that comes to me as the one true Lucifer, Satan, Samael, Lilith, blah, 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 is probably either a troll or, you know, or should contact their mental health professionals for delusions of grandeur. I'm not saying these things don't exist, but I don't think they're necessarily the norm in that sense. So when you're looking at something that's so dogmatic that there's no room for interpretation, there's no room for, well, I have a different experience of this than you, or the person over there, or the person over there, or whoever wrote this book I'm reading. I have a problem with that. Like, that to me just seems really, even if your interpretations are wrong, and it might be some of it, like, I have a degree in art history, so I studied things in a way that I was able to interpret them. You know, yeah, you can look at a painting of something and go, yeah, it's a painting of a tree, but there's a lot more to it being than just a painting of a tree. You know, it's, if you want to look at it as, well, it's a tree and nothing else. You can't argue this and whatnot based on experience. Well, what type of tree is it? Is this tree symbolic of something? You know, looking at the techniques and the style and the era it was made, maybe there's a message in here somewhere. So when you are formally trained on how to analyze and look at things from multiple perspectives. It's not just, this is a tree. It's looking at it and understanding I spent many years, many annoying years studying philosophy, theory, criticism, aesthetics, and reading very stodgy, books and you know, essays and shit of that thing. Not only in having to also write a lot about that type of things and the ways of looking and the ways of seeing and the ways of interpreting and thinking about things. And sometimes we can't necessarily, until we put ourselves in someone else's shoes, really understand how that thing, like, from that person's perspective, yours is going to be so different than what that person's perspective is. Like, when I did my undergrad, I did my art history thesis on an Iranian artist, Shirin Neshat, and a lot of what I was talking about in her work, because she was an Iranian, I think she's an exile from Iran. But I was talking about the concept of veiling in looking at it from Eastern cultures and Western cultures, where it's like, well, when you look in the Western world, you have the beauty of the veiled bride and the Virgin Mary. And, if you're in the Christian thing, girls in the communion dresses and the mantillas that, women wear to church and stuff like that. Veiling is looked at in the context of the Western world in a very positive way. The veiled bride, the veiled virgin, the Virgin Mary. But as soon as you put a veil on a Middle Eastern woman, she's oppressed, or they're, in any context of, especially at the time that I was writing this, which was about 20 years ago, post 9/11, there was a lot of Islamophobia at the time. So it's looking at it as this person's oppressed and being, and all the cultural things we're looking at, because we're looking at it from our worldview, but not seeing it from their worldview. And there's plenty of women who wear the chador, which is what they wear at the time in Iran, but and gladly do so and have no problem with it, and are kind of like, yeah, no, we choose this. We're not being oppressed, whatever, fuck off. But, till you're able to look at both sides of that and really deeply understand all that goes into something that you're seeing just for face value, like, you really, if you're not open to interpretation and open to the fact that you could be wrong, or someone else, could be no more than you, whatever. I'm here. Like, I am sharing my experiences. I really don't care whether you believe them or not. I don't want you to follow in my footsteps. If it helps you, great. I'm just sharing my experiences. And do I want to form a cult around that? No. Because I would be a terrible cult leader. But I think it's important to share spiritual experiences and to talk about them. And it's really fucking rude when people are very condescending and ableist to you of, well, you can't prove your spiritual experiences, so you're, batshit crazy, or you're a fake or a fraud or a phony. Well, who really can? I mean, I went to Catholic school, never seen anyone prove anything there as far as that goes. I've researched world religions and mythologies for many decades. I'm not sure, outside of, the evidence in art and sculpture, I don't know what people need as far as spiritual proof. I mean, are there empirical scientific experiments that I'm missing to prove my supernatural experiences? If so, hit me up. Let me know what they are. If there's a website I can plug shit into, or some app or something. But, and maybe I'm being a little catty here, snarky, but, and it's not to say don't question things, or don't question people, or don't question me. I don't care. But also don't be an asshole, And yes, there are people who are completely, obviously, batshit crazy, full of shit or whatnot. I don't think that is the norm, though. There's a lot of fucking people on the planet. And, your interpretations may be wildly different. Like I was talking to a friend of mine today about like kind of like the concept of Satan. Well, okay, that is you've got so many lenses to view this through and ways to interpret it. Which one's correct? You've got the theistic versus the non-theistic views on Satan. You've got you know all looking through world religions, not just biblical lore, but looking at all the world religions and mythologies, what archetype fits that, devil, Satan, that kind of dark entity, in that sense. So you've got that whole rubric. And if you are, following, in the sort of, biblical fallen angel, war in heaven, that if that lore appeals to you, that's one way of looking at it, or through the Gnostic lens and stuff like that. So there's another interpretation. Some people look at Satan as only a title. Like Satan just means the adversary, that it's not an entity and entirely. And then you look at, newer interpretations like through the Satanic Temple, who just, it's completely non-theistic. There's no spiritual attachment to it at all. And, or Satan's a deific mask because, throughout history, different lore and mythology and, different, interpretations, it's sort of like, well, it's Lucifer Satan, is Beelzebub Satan, is Belial Satan, is Shemiaza Satan. Does anyone know for sure? Probably not. So it's open to interpretation. So saying however you work with Satan is the only way to work with Satan and everyone else is just, full of shit is like, well, that's just the same as how, the Catholic Church tells you to believe in the one true God and all other gods are false and yakety schmackety. I don't feel like going into the details of that, but it's that dogma and it's that coming from on high of I know more and you should believe this because this is what I believe and don't question it. And if you question it, then, clearly you need to have proof that, behind how you work with Satan. I'm like, whatever. Personally speaking, I view Satan more in like a deific mask as maybe I would say like the embodiment of infernal energy. So like okay, let's just put this in the dynamic of God and Satan for using that example. So God, however you interpret that to be, the God form of any religion, or mythology or whatever, the supreme being, as it were. So you have this God form. To me, my interpretation of that is that God form is sort of the embodiment, a deific mask of that, if you want to call it celestial energy and whatnot. Whereas Satan is the embodiment of the infernal energy. Those two energies are intertwined. And if you really understand energy and energy work, neither can exist without the other. And in that kind of looking at it, and I think, and could I be completely wrong and off base? Sure. I think, but it's open to interpretation, and that is the beautiful thing about it. I'm not going to say my way is the only way you can look at Satan and work with Satan and whatnot. If Satan tells you to, stop eating fast food and live a good life, okay, cool. I'm not going to poo-poo that or be like, oh, well, you're working with fake Satan because that's not what Satan does when I work with Satan. I mean, every entity is different. And we work with them in the way that makes sense to us. And there might be cultural differences there in how you work with them. There might be things that are just, not for nothing, the older you get, you acquire a lot more information and a lot more wisdom along the way. I mean, when I was 18, I surely, didn't know the shit I know now at 48. I've experienced a lot in those 30 years. you're never going to know everything. And it was interesting because I was watching a live stream earlier, and it was kind of like talking about beginners and experts, and I'm kind of like, I was sort of thinking, I'm like, there are no experts. Everyone's a beginner because you're always learning something new. Like, I know a lot. I'm highly educated, and I read and I take a lot of courses and classes on just about everything. I've worked in a great many fields. I've been trained in a great many things, and had a lot of experiences in all those different areas that form my cumulative who I am as a person at the age of 48. Um, so lost my train of thought, but um, I guess just what I'm trying to say here is that would I call myself an expert in anything? I'm like, I'm highly knowledgeable, but I'm always going to be learning something new. Like yes, I'm an occultist, and I kind of I'm all over the place sometimes with what I do, but I kind of lean a little bit more in the black magic left hand path direction. But it's not to say that I'm not like learning other things, or I know everything there is to know about the left hand path, because I don't. I haven't explored, the Kabbalistic stuff and the Cliffofic stuff. I haven't, done all the path working of Primal Craft, although I did order one of the books, so hopefully that will be here at some point in time. I know it's being shipped from overseas. So there's a lot of different ways, and there's so much knowledge out there, and there's so much interpretation. Every single book I have has a different way of doing something. And sometimes that's passed down through different lineages, through their teachers, through their own personal experiences. Is every single person bat crap insane? Um, I don't know. I mean, if you have faith and believe in a religion, or have spiritual experiences, are you fucking insane? It seems a little ableist to put it in that way. Are some people? Of course. But it's always a some, not all. And if you're going to just look down your nose at people and sit on your high horse and judge people from a very absolutist, dogmatic position, especially in the occult, when you're not leaving anything open to interpretation beyond your own interpretation, get over yourself, because you ain't all that. Because even the experts and people who've been doing it for decades don't know everything. Or they have their own interpretations and their own experiences. Whether or not I believe those experiences or follow their messages or whatnot is another story, because guess what? I think for myself, and I draw my own conclusions, and I ask questions. I am very skeptical. I know how to interpret things. I look at things from many different angles. I'm highly educated, so I can do that. And if I am stumped on something, I ask around and I see, like, hey, what do you think about this? Or, just to get a variety of perspectives. Maybe I will see this differently now. Because absolute dogmatic minds are closed minds. There's nothing open to interpretation. There's no. It sounds really sad and boring. I'm sorry. And maybe I'm a little prickly when it comes to that, because I did spend a great many years as a pragmatic sort of atheist agnostic, because I was married to one who thought everything was stupid. So not for nothing. It's fine, but it also sucked the air out of the room. It sucked the spirituality of me. It sucked the magic out of me, and I had to bury it because it was stupid, or I was stupid. And I found an old journal from probably 10, 11, 12 years ago, maybe, where I was starting to feel, especially as I was yet again misdiagnosed by a shitty psychiatrist. Luckily, I've had an awesome one since then. But I was starting to question all these things like, am I just delusional? If you can question whether or not you're delusional, you're probably not delusional. Because if you were delusional, you would never ask yourself that. You would never question your reality. You would just believe it. You'd be like, nope, not open to interpretation, not open to question. This is absolutely what it is. But the fact that you can ask questions, and being someone who has struggled with mental health issues, I can very viscerally tell you the difference between a spiritual experience and like a psychotic breakdown. They're very different. For instance, I probably wouldn't remember any of the spiritual experiences if they were part of a psychotic episode or any type of psychosis, because I also, as someone who has struggled with mental health issues for 27 years, I think, actually probably longer, probably over 30 years at this point. I just didn't do anything about it until I was in my 20s. But I know a lot because I had to become an informed patient. I had to advocate for myself. And in doing that, I had to learn a lot. I had to learn all of my any diagnoses in and out, every single thing about them, every single, okay, if you are borderline personality disorder, you have to have this, 5 of the 9 criteria. I think it changed in the last rendition of the DSM, but at the time it was like you had to have 5 out of the 9 to get that diagnosis. And okay, let's look at this. And then I read every single book I could find on borderline personality disorder at the time. Or bipolar. And it was always the thing with bipolar for me, because they misread all my ADHD as mania. I never had a manic episode. I'm a little high strung and keyed up sometimes because I have ADHD. I'm not losing touch with reality. I have ADHD. And, most of the stuff at the time, and I think I've talked about this before, is that, women were just dismissed of my age, in my age bracket. We were just all dismissed and shoehorned into bipolar diagnoses or personality disorder diagnoses, because because CPTSD really didn't, unless you were like a Vietnam vet or a Gulf War vet, or, we're in like a car accident, we didn't get PTSD from, all the shit we endured. And autism and ADHD, most of that, some of the men in our age bracket were diagnosed earlier. But all the early studies on autism were done on boys, and autism manifests very differently in women. And of my age bracket, unless you were like Rain Man, you slipped under the cracks. No one noticed. You were just the weird kid, or the one that talked too much, or, gifted or whatnot. So I had to become a very informed advocate on mental health issues for myself. So I am very well knowledgeable in that area. Believe me, I know. And not only am I knowledgeable in the diagnoses for, pertaining to myself, I am not a therapist. I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't have a degree in anything. I just had to become an informed advocate for myself. So in that, I can very, very viscerally tell you the difference between what is real and what is not. And also because sometimes medications will fuck you up in a way that, can give you auditory and visual hallucinations. So I'd be like, well, I wasn't hearing voices before this medication, and this medication is making, I never heard voices, but in that sense. But now I am. So it's being able to sort of discern what the issue is there. So I know the difference between, the psychosis, like when you have no grasp on reality, and my spirituality is not psychosis. I mean, it might not align up with everyone else's rendition of spirituality, but and as I did a video on this before, your spiritual experiences are valid. Even if you're full of shit, they're still valid to you. Now, does everyone have a great idea? I mean, if, Satan is telling you to go out and, go pew pew up your, the thing, I would say it's probably not, that would be not something to follow. And if someone is advocating that type of stuff, also not following that type of person. But I find the beauty in interpretation. And I love to talk about that. Like, I love to understand how people work with different spirits or what their cultural practices are, what their spiritual practices are. I may not have a lot of experience in chaos magic, but I love to learn more about it. Will I incorporate every single chaos magic thing ever into my practice? Maybe whatever seems to work for me might, but I love learning things. And like, literally the moment I'm like, nope, I know all I need to know and I don't need to know anything more, and, become, a stodgy, dogmatic, absolutist piece of shit, just, dispose of me carefully. Because I have expanding consciousness and knowledge is the most important thing you can do. And it's in a learning experience. And you know what? Sometimes learning experiences, you need to fall on your face hard to learn a lesson. And is that pleasant? Like, is me telling you, hey kids, don't do drugs. Drugs are bad. Is that going to really prevent you from doing drugs? I can show you all the evidence in the world of why not to do drugs. I can tell you all the stories about how not to do drugs, but you might still do drugs, and maybe you never have a drug problem. Maybe you're just a casual user, have some fun, whatever. Maybe you become a, opioid addict and, it's bad. They're still your choices. And addiction is a disease. Believe me, I'm very intimately familiar with that. But me telling you not to do drugs is probably not going to sway you in one way or another as to whether or not you're going to do drugs or not. You're going to make that decision, and that decision might end up catastrophically for you. You may fall on your face. You may have, you may have that one bad trip, come back and be like, whoa, no, never doing that again. Because I've had drug experiences like that. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think I'm ever going to do that one again. That was ecstasy for me. Because I didn't know that I had sensory processing issues, being autistic and not knowing I was autistic. So the last time I did ecstasy, which was probably about 20 years ago at this point, I was like, my skin felt like leather, molasses covered leather, and everything that touched me felt like alien, slimy suction cup tentacles. Like, I was laying there going, get the sheets off me. They're disgusting. So anyways, lesson learned, we don't do that. But, it's, and I know over the years in my experience, especially when I was younger, my parents telling me things, I'm like, no, fuck you, I'm going to do what I want. And sometimes, I wish I'd listened to them, but be that as it may, I learned a lesson in that. And sorry, I'm just checking the time on my phone. Okay. So to summarize, because I've been yammering and it's the middle of the night, don't be a dogmatic absolutist asshole. Learn a thing, be open to interpretation, being open to other viewpoints outside of your own. Even if you don't agree with them. I mean, I don't agree with people that I am close friends with on stuff, because we have different interpretations of it, and we can meet in the middle and talk about that and learn something from each other. Honestly, if you're looking for empirical scientific proof of spiritual experiences, maybe the occult isn't for you. Because I don't think I know very many people who can empirically prove anything. Sure, you might have some, chatter on a ghost box. I might hear one thing, you might hear something else. Sure, you got a smoke manifestation in your whatever. I may see it, you may not. You may see something different than I see. It's, again, all these things are open to interpretation, and that's great. Take it or leave it. I mean, it's one of those things. It's like in some different spiritual communities, it's sort of like, or actually, no one, I'm sorry, it's a different community. It's sort of like, if you go to like a group therapy setting or like a 12-step fellowship, it's kind of like, take what works for you and leave the rest. It's kind of like, all right, well, I don't work with every single entity ever. So do we all need to work with the same ones? No. Do we all have to have the exact same experience for it to be valid? No. Because then at some point someone will be like, well, that person's just, they're only having that experience because you have that experience and you talked about that experience and put the idea of the experience in their head, and now they're having that experience too, in a projection kind of way. That's more of a psychological approach to it, and I got into a fight with a psychology professor once who told me that I could not possibly remember anything before I was 6 or 7 years old, and that all memories that we have were implanted in us by our parents. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't think my parents can tell me what I dreamt, because I remember some of that stuff. Like I remember, like my parents couldn't tell me what my dreams looked like. It's like, yes, I can remember things based on a photograph or based on a story my mom told me. It's like, people form different memories, and this person was just so dogmatic in their, well, science says children can't form memories before the age of 6 or 7, which I don't know. I still call bullshit on that one to this day, and that was 20 some years ago. So, but don't be afraid to be open to interpretation. And you could be wrong. The other person could be wrong. No one could be wrong. Everyone could be right. No one could be right. We could be living in a holographic universe, and who the fuck knows? And that's awesome. So embrace it. Anyways, I've been rambling for long enough. If you're still watching, hey, great, thanks. Hope you got something out of it. Or at least you're thinking differently now, because my prime goal of having this channel is to get you guys to think for yourselves, and to lead by example in some sense, and to call bullshit on things. And because there is, quite frankly, a lot of bullshit out there, don't get me wrong. But I just want people to be able to approach spirituality in a sense where you ask questions, because, not asking any questions can also be harmful. Questioning things is good. Interpreting things is great. You don't have to do with the spell or ritual the exact way it's written in the book. It's just a suggestion. You don't have to do things the way I do them or think the way I think. It's like you're entitled to your opinions, and your opinions might be offensive and full of shit to me, but you're entitled to them. They're yours. You own them. Anyways, I love you all. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to click like and subscribe. Smash the notification bell, and I will talk to y'all later.